In 2015, in the heart of Durham, North Carolina, USA, a story began to unfold, one shrouded in heartbreak and injustice. This is a case that has haunted many, leaving a community shattered and searching for answers. As we delve into this tragic tale, prepare yourself for a conclusion that left a void, one that feels painfully unresolved. At its heart is Tiara Hall, a young life brimming with hope and promise, a life cut short far too soon, with justice that, for many, fell heartbreakingly short. Meet Tiara Hall, a young girl full of life and dreams. Born in Texas in 1997, Tiara was raised solely by her mother, Kelton Breshon, who remembers her as a lively, spirited child with a magnetic personality. With no father figure in her life, Kelton became Tiara's world, her anchor through every challenge and every joy. Kelton Breshon remembers Tiara as a bubbly, lively child, full of energy and personality. Details about Tiara's early childhood remain scarce, but in 2012, a fresh start awaited her and her mother when they moved from Texas to Durham, North Carolina. It was here that Tiara began a new chapter at Jordan High School, where she would soon leave an unforgettable mark. The move to Durham offered Tiara and her mother a new beginning, one filled with hope and promise. Tiara quickly adjusted to her new school life, drawing others to her with her humor, energy, and warmth. She made many close friendships, becoming a beloved presence within the school community, her spirit a beacon of positivity that touched everyone she met. One of Tiara's closest friends was Amia Wilson, who remembers their bond as instant and unbreakable like two peas in a pod, she would say. Those who knew Tiara described her as gentle, with an innocent spirit that radiated kindness. She was the kind of person who, as they put it, wouldn't hurt a fly. Tiara was described as someone who wouldn't hurt a fly. Every morning, without fail, she would tell her mother she loved her before leaving for school, always receiving an "I love you" in return. She dreamed of attending North Carolina Central University someday, with aspirations to study business and eventually launch her own enterprise. Growing up with financial challenges, she was determined to create a stable life for herself and make her mother proud. Raised in a single-parent household, Tiara understood financial hardships from a young age, but she had a drive that went beyond her years, a strong determination to rise above these challenges and build a stable future. During her time at Jordan High School, she began a relationship with a classmate named Kelton Fox, a seemingly typical high school romance that would later take a dark and tragic turn. At first, Tiara and Kelton's relationship seemed typical, with little to raise concern. But as time went on, things began to shift. By November 2014, their relationship had entered an on and off phase, with frequent makeups and breakups. And her mother would later recall how over the Christmas break, Tiara decided to end things for good. The relationship had become too much, and she told her mother that Kelton was too clingy. Having endured a difficult relationship herself, Tiara's mother was sensitive to signs of unhealthy dynamics. But nothing about Tiara's relationship with Kelton seemed alarming, and Tiara didn't express any concerns that would worry her mother. But in fact, Kelton appeared polite and respectful, always shaking her hand, addressing her with "yes ma'am" and "no ma'am," and even walking Tiara home from school to make sure she was safe. To her mother, he seemed trustworthy, someone who truly cared for her daughter. Kelton Fox lived with his mother on Cherry Blossom Circle in Durham, North Carolina. His early life was marked by instability, with his father leaving him at a young age. He grew up in a household touched by domestic violence, an environment that left him with emotional scars and a troubled outlook on life. Much of Kelton's background remains private, though one thing was clear: he developed an unsettling fascination with weaponry. He owned a range of dangerous items, including knives and a hatchet. Like Tiara, Kelton attended Jordan High School, where they were classmates in the same year. By September 2014, Tiara and Kelton were in their junior year. At first, their relationship seemed to blossom, something Kelton documented meticulously in his journal. In the beginning, he filled its pages with love notes to Tiara, drawing hearts with their initials K and T inside. But as time went on, the tone of these messages began to shift, becoming darker and more intense. Kelton's words took on a possessive tone, becoming fixated and obsessive. Now, next to the love hearts, he would write things like, "It's you and me only," and then more intense statements such as "hubby and wifey for life and ride or die." His journal entries painted a picture of someone who saw Tiara as his possession rather than his partner. The tone of Kelton's journal took another dark turn. Their relationship seemed to be in turmoil, and his writings reflected this. He began to write monologues filled with frustration and bitterness, asking, "Why can't you just be thankful?" And then, with growing despair, he would write phrases like, "There is a darkness inside me. I am a savage." His obsession was deepening, transforming into something dangerous and unhinged. Experts who later analyzed Kelton's journals concluded that he had developed a severe pathological obsession and a need to control Tiara Hall. His writings became a disturbing reflection of his violent thoughts and intense jealousy, revealing an inability to cope with their breakup. His fixation had spiraled into a consuming need to possess her completely, no matter the cost. Kelton's anger deepened, and his suspicions of Tiara grew. He began expressing pure hatred in his journal entries, writing disturbing phrases like, "I'm tired of it all. I am done playing the hero. I will take your soul." He even described an uncontrollable lust for blood. These chilling words led analysts to describe his mindset as deeply narcissistic and sociopathic, a dangerous blend that foreshadowed the darkness ahead. On social media, Kelton used the alias King K, the savage, a name that reflected his dark and controlling persona. He even referred to Tiara as his queen, a disturbing expression of his possessive obsession. Then, on Friday, March 27, 2015, Tiara left for school, unaware that this day would mark the end of her young life. It was a mild, overcast day in Durham, leading up to spring break, a break Tiara had been looking forward to, with plans to spend time with her best friend Amia and a close circle of friends. As Tiara moved from class to class that day, surveillance footage captured her moving with unusual caution, her demeanor more reserved than usual, as if she sensed something was wrong. She was seen looking over her shoulder, checking around corners, almost as if she were trying to avoid someone. Later that afternoon, at 4:16 p.m., Tiara crossed paths with her ex-boyfriend, Kelton. Despite their breakup, the two had maintained a seemingly friendly relationship. The two walked together, talking casually, with nothing seeming out of the ordinary. To an observer, their interaction appeared friendly, with no visible tension. At one point, Tiara took a moment to sit on a row of oddly placed cabinets, unaware of the danger that lay ahead. In a sudden move, Kelton stepped ahead of Tiara, and with a swift motion, he grabbed her phone from her hand. He kept swinging for it, determined to get hold of it. Some speculate that he was paranoid, wanting to check her messages to see if she was talking to other boys. Others believe he knew taking the phone would provoke her, forcing her to follow him. Once he had her phone, Kelton took off. Frustrated, Tiara stepped off the cabinet, lifted her head, and began following him. At this point, she seemed unfazed, likely assuming it was just a harmless game. Tiara followed him with a slight smile, likely thinking he was just being playful or flirtatious. But unbeknownst to her, Kelton's intentions were far darker, a sinister plan that extended beyond harmless teasing. Kelton led Tiara off school grounds and into the quiet streets of the surrounding neighborhood, ignoring her calls for him to stop and give back her phone. Each step took them farther away from safety, deeper into his dark plan. Determined, Tiara continued to follow, her frustration mounting as Kelton pressed on without glancing back. They both grew tired, but persisted in walking through the neighborhood of Trotter Ridge Road, separated by a steady distance of about 25 meters. Where was he going? What was his plan? Kelton led her to a house at 4123 Trotter Ridge Road, just 2 blocks and approximately 300 meters northwest of Jordan High School. The seemingly endless chase was leading her to an abandoned property, a place that held secrets far darker than she could imagine. The property at 4123 Trotter Ridge Road was expansive, surrounded by towering trees that lent it an isolated and eerie feeling. The land seemed to have been carved directly from the surrounding woodland, creating a natural boundary that shrouded the house in privacy and limited visibility. Sources indicated that this property was once owned by Kelton's mother, which suggests he was familiar with its hidden corners. The house itself was abandoned, sitting approximately 40 meters from the road behind a line of trees, an unsettling sight that hinted at its dark history. Though not in complete disrepair, the property on Trotter Ridge Road appeared derelict and unfurnished, as if renovations had begun but were abruptly abandoned. It was a haunting backdrop for the events that were about to unfold. Kelton guided Tiara around the side of the house, heading toward the secluded rear porch. Then, he suddenly stopped, dropped her phone on the ground, and watched as she bent down to pick it up. With her back turned, he unsheathed a pocket knife, moving quietly toward her, a chilling intent hidden behind his calm exterior. In a horrifying act of savagery, he plunged the blade into Tiara multiple times. Initially, she let out a blood-curdling scream, a sound that echoed into the neighborhood. But the relentless onslaught of stabs silenced her voice forever, drowning her cries in a pool of violence. Kelton stabbed her at least 14 times, inflicting multiple wounds across her face, her chest, and her neck. The ferocity of the attack was so brutal that part of the knife broke off, becoming lodged in her cheek, a horrific testament to the violence that unfolded in that moment. He attacked with such ferocity that he severed multiple blood vessels, causing blood to spray across the porch. What was once an ordinary space became a grisly scene, with blood splattered along the lower walls, the blue window frames, and the back door, painting a horrifying picture of violence. The evidence painted a clear picture of a violent struggle. Tragically, Tiara Hall died at the scene. After the brutal attack, Kelton took a lighter and burned graffiti into the blue rear door of the house. A chilling mark left behind that symbolized his twisted mindset. The message read, "King K the Savage," a reference to the alias he had adopted on social media and in his journals, symbolizing his obsession with control and dominance. The psychological profile of someone capable of such a violent crime, and then taking the time to inscribe a title of superiority, reveals a deeply twisted mindset and a chilling love for violence. Such traits are rare, even among serious criminals. The whereabouts of the murder weapon remain unknown, leading investigators to assume he disposed of it after the killing. After burning his ominous words into the door, Kelton calmly walked away from Tiara's lifeless body, retracing his steps back toward the school, his expression disturbingly indifferent. His indifferent return, walking through the same streets with no apparent concern, left investigators and the community deeply disturbed. The calculated nature of his departure raised unsettling questions about whether his actions had been premeditated, revealing a chilling level of planning. At 4:57 p.m., after the crime was complete, Kelton returned to the school, heading straight for the restroom. He pulled his red sweater over his hands, a desperate attempt to hide any traces of blood or evidence of his horrifying actions. Surveillance footage captured his behavior, further hinting at his awareness of the need to conceal his involvement. The deliberate act of heading straight to clean up added weight to the theory that Kelton's actions were premeditated and calculated, a chilling reflection of his mindset. After leaving the bathroom, Kelton reappeared with his hands uncovered, indicating he had tried to wash away any evidence of blood. At some point, he changed into a hoodie, then went to the front office to call his mother for a ride home. Together, Kelton and his mother left the school for the weekend. And few hours later, Kelton called the police.
Durham Communications, you're on a recorded line.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I were just taking a walk, and there's this house that just sold at 4123 Trotter Ridge. So we look in the windows, really nice house. We walk around the back, and there's a lady lying asleep. We think she's asleep. But anyway, she was lying behind the house on the ground, right behind the house. It's exactly 2 blocks before Jordan High.
Meanwhile, when police arrived at the scene and discovered Tiara's body, the horror of the situation became immediately apparent. She was undeniably deceased. Responders quickly secured the area, establishing a crime scene that bore the marks of unimaginable violence. The level of brutality left no doubt about the severity of the crime, prompting authorities to meticulously gather evidence, including the blood patterns and the chilling messages burned into the property's door. The horrific scene ignited a fire within the detectives, driving them to find the person responsible for such an act of brutality. But first, they needed to identify Tiara to piece together the story of her tragic end. At the crime scene, police discovered a pink phone case and black earphones, but no phone was found. Their search continued until they uncovered a slip of paper partially sticking out of Tiara's back pocket. It was a hall pass from her high school, authorizing her to leave class on March 27, 2015, bearing her signature in blue ink, but lacking her name. Investigators promptly reached out to the school for more information, hoping to piece together her final hours. The detectives spoke with the assistant principal, informing him of the murder and revealing that the victim was a student at his school. With urgency, the police began reviewing the surveillance footage from the school, seeking any clues that could illuminate the timeline. The assistant principal and detectives sifted through the camera footage, starting at lunchtime on the day of the murder, searching for a young black girl wearing grey sweatpants and an Elmo t-shirt. Every second counted as they combed through the recordings, hoping to find any sign of Tiara. After some time, they identified a possible match and tracked her movements on the camera. A minute later, she was seen walking toward the stairwell. It was then that the image quality became clear enough to confirm her identity as the victim Tiara Hall. The police went to Tiara's home to deliver the tragic news. When they did, her mother was torn apart by grief, her world coming to an abrupt standstill in the face of unspeakable loss. Amidst her overwhelming grief, she managed to provide officers with vital information. She shared her daughter's mobile phone number, allowing the police to track its last known locations, hoping to uncover more about her final moments. While canvassing the neighborhood, a female witness stepped forward, telling the police she heard a woman screaming on Friday, March 27th. The police learned that several neighbors had home security systems that might have captured crucial evidence. Detectives began reviewing the security footage, noticing a black man walking alone down the road with a young woman trailing behind him at a distance of about 25 meters. Meanwhile, other investigators continued analyzing the school surveillance footage, connecting the dots in this chilling case. Investigators tracked Tiara's movements until she encountered a young black man wearing a red top, loose blue pants, and sporting dreadlocks. The details began to align, painting a clearer picture of the events leading up to the tragedy. He was identified as Kelton Fox. The police observed Kelton in the footage, noting that he entered the bathroom, presumably to wash away any traces of blood from his hands. The police swabbed the bathroom where he had washed his hands and soon confirmed the presence of Tiara's DNA. The pieces of the story were falling into place, and the weight of the evidence was growing. the police were increasingly confident they knew who the killer was. On Tuesday, March 31st, 2015, they believed they had gathered enough evidence to arrest Kelton. At 11 a.m., he was taken into custody for first-degree murder. When the police asked him why he thought he was being arrested, he answered in a disquieting manner. He mumbled, "One of my friends has gone," a response that revealed little comprehension of the gravity of the situation. According to the police, Kelton appeared disinterested, showing no signs of fear, panic, or remorse. In stark contrast, his mother broke down immediately upon hearing the news, her devastation palpable. During her interview, his mother described the moment she informed Kelton that Tiara was dead. She recounted how he was visibly devastated, grappling with the reality of the situation. When Kelton was interviewed by the police, he began with a lie, claiming he had never left the school. But the detectives were aware of the truth and confronted him immediately with the surveillance footage. During a search of Kelton's home, investigators discovered a green knife sheath covered in writing. Scrawled across it was the word "savage." Upon closer examination, the police found blood on the sheath, further solidifying their case. In his bedroom, they uncovered graffiti-style artwork on paper reading "King KK, the Savage," matching the inscription at the scene. They also found his journals, which revealed disturbing insights and pointed toward a possible motive. As the police continued their interview with Kelton, they took photographs of his clothing. They were taken aback when they noticed spots of blood on his black and white Adidas shoes, a critical piece of evidence linking him to the crime. The blood was tested, and DNA results confirmed it matched Tiara's. Kelton was charged with first-degree murder in the interview room, subsequently placed in jail to await his trial. During Kelton's first court appearance, the judge informed him that he could face the death penalty if convicted of first-degree murder. However, his public defender, Lawrence Campbell, quietly reminded the court that Kelton was only 17 years old, making him ineligible for capital punishment due to his age. The judge acknowledged this, stating that life imprisonment would be the maximum penalty he could face. While there was insufficient evidence to prove premeditation, the detectives expressed their concerns, suspecting that the attack on Tiara may have been calculated. Yet, given Kelton's age and the lack of solid proof for first-degree murder, the prosecution offered a plea deal for second-degree murder. Kelton Fox accepted the plea deal, opting to avoid a jury trial. His defense team presented multiple mitigating factors, including a traumatic upbringing, exposure to domestic violence, and ongoing mental health issues. Court records revealed a diagnosis of PTSD, along with signs of borderline personality disorder, hallucinations, and paranoia, suggesting Kelton had been unstable for an extended period. Ultimately, on June 14, 2014, at the age of 20, Kelton received his sentence -12 to 15 years in prison, a punishment that many felt was far too lenient for the life he had taken. Under the terms of his plea deal, Kelton Fox could potentially walk free in his 30s, given the opportunity to rebuild his life outside of prison. Disturbingly, there is currently no evidence that he has ever expressed remorse or regret for the murder of Tiara Hall. Throughout the court proceedings, he admitted to the killing, yet displayed little emotion. This outcome stands in stark contrast to Tiara Hall's fate. Her life was brutally cut short, leaving her family and friends to grieve for the future she would never experience. The courts incarcerated a dangerous man, but ultimately, was it for long enough to ensure justice for Tiara?